Well, thanks for tuning in. Thank you for joining me. Welcome to today's episode of the Jake Lloyd Show. Sorry, maybe you were just in the other lobby a minute ago and then you're back now. Or maybe you saw the link and you just hopped in. I was live and I got everything ready to go. And I was about to transition from the intro card to the live space. And for some reason, I just had like a mental lapse. And instead of hitting transition, I clicked stop stream. And now on D Live, that's not a problem because D Live just goes, it's the same stream continuously, just goes up. YouTube, obviously a different situation there. So I had to retweet out the link and everything. So anyway. Anyway. Well, kind of just killed my momentum there. I was like, okay, I'm ready to go with the stream. And now I'm like major bra moment there. Anyway, but we pick ourselves up and we carry on and we overcome. That's what we do. Hey, it's only Tuesday. It's not the weekend yet. We'll keep this one buttoned up here. What do you say, folks? All right. Well, anyway, be sure to like the video. I appreciate it. It helps the algorithm when people like the video, as well as leaving comments. Every comment that you leave boosts the video and the algorithm. Same thing with the likes and all of that. Just engagement in general boosts the algorithm, so I always appreciate that. If you want to ask any questions or leave any statements or just support the show, you can do so at this link here, entropystream.live/Jake Lloyd. It's also in the description so that you on YouTube, so you can just go there and click that if you'd like. If you feel so inclined to support me and my work here. I will tell you there are some big things to come. I'm very excited. I have some plans. I just need to get a camera. I used to have a camera, like a really nice Sony HD camcorder, but I don't have that anymore. And so I have to get a new one for me to do some of the stuff that I want to do here going forward. But anyway, hopefully, let me know if the audio sounds better. I was messing around last night and I downloaded a new encoder for my for OBS there, so that it's not the basic one, because I was talking about the mic on like the quality. I was like, when I record on any other program it sounds pretty good, but then when I record or stream through OBS it sounds very bad, and like it's not very good. So I downloaded something. It's still not as good as it is like when I record in other software, but it's doing better, and so we're making incremental steps forward, and eventually it'll be perfect and nothing will ever go wrong again. And can you imagine how great that day is going to be when we're perfect, when the show is perfect, no problems ever again, no boomer tech problems ever again. It's going to be incredible, folks, and you're going to see it all. Other people, they won't know how great that'll be, because they're going to show up not knowing the history, and they won't even know, but you'll be able to appreciate it along with me. And I'll know and you'll know, and we'll have that deep unspoken bond. Anyway, so let's get into the show now that I've kind of explained the situation there. That's the thing. Wow, it's always something, because I got the audio. The audio is a little bit better, and then I like get ready to go live, and so then I have to end the stream. It's like there's like a karmic, or like a, what is it? I don't know if it's karmic or like dharmic balance. There's like this balance in the tech on the Jake Lloyd Show. It can't be too good. It's never so bad that it just like doesn't work. It's like maybe I get halfway through the show and then it cuts out, but it's like rarely that I just like that I can't even do it. But it always has to balance out. There's yin and yang, and that I think that really, it's just a life lesson for all of us. And so what a blessing. What a blessing for all of us to get to take part in that. Anyway, on to the business portion of the show. What's up, friends in chat? Glad to see you here. So the title of today's show is Pioneers of the New Age. Pioneers of the New Age. Today we're going to talk about something about the American character, who we are as Americans, as the American people, like the true historic American people. but how that should apply to how that should influence our actions as we move in the world and as we go forward, as we try to change the political situation in the United States. How we solve the problems that we face, how we save our country, how we wrest back control of our country from the Luciferians that control the levers of power now, how we pull ourselves back from this precarious place on the edge of a cliff, how we do this. And in this episode specifically is not so much about what it is, like how we do it, but it's how we should. I guess we'll get into that in a minute. But one thing that I hope to do, because I'm not interested in just getting on a stream and talking about the news. There's value to that. That's fine. I could do that. I can talk about anything for an hour, 2 hours, or whatever. Um, I have that ability that I could just talk about things and ramble about them if I wanted to. But I don't really have an interest in just. You could, if you want to know about the news, you can go read the news. You can watch a cable show. You can watch a stream online. There's no shortage of that sort of content. But I want to do something a little bit different, and this is similar to the idea that I have for the Substack, which will be coming. I have some pieces that I'm going to get ready so that when we launch that, there's some content there for y'all. But in the past, there was like this, there was a like an idea, like the way that certain things were published. It wasn't just like, here's my opinion piece on this. Not everything was so. It wasn't like a big book or just a single essay or something, but people would publish things in a series. And it's not to say that that never happens now. Like, of course, people publish like blog posts. You have like Curtis Yarvin. That's a good example. All of his stuff is pretty related, even though it covers a lot of different stuff, a lot of different concepts. It's all about the same thing. But I want my show and I want my writings to have a feel of like tracts, like a series of tracts. Um, this is like what the Federalist was, the Federalist Papers. It was a series of essays written and published in various newspapers. Or I think it was one newspaper initially in New York, and then they were like republished elsewhere. But I want to like broadly, the purpose of this show and the writing that I want to do is for the benefit of the historic American nation engaged in politics in our present time, how we should view it, what we should be doing, aids for individuals, for people, as well as movements and that sort of thing. I have no desire to start any kind of movement here on my YouTube channel or with my streams or anything like that. I really have no interest in that. My efforts, I would rather just take these ideas that I'm thinking about and talking about and give them to you. And if they influence you in a positive way, then that's great. But my efforts will be primarily in the real world. And then this is hopefully for the benefit of everybody who finds it appealing or finds it interesting. So that's kind of the point of it. And so today I'm not talking about like, I don't want to define any kind of like list of like, oh well, here's XYZ or whatever, here's bullet points about what we need to do. But a lot of it is just bringing to mind, just like re-injecting this into the consciousness of ourselves and the people around us. So anyway, everything that we have, everything that we know about politics, everything that we know about communicating ideas and changing people's minds and everything is either dead, or we don't have a counterpart for for this modern age or this contemporary era that we are entering. We are in that era now, the digital information age, whatever you want to call it. We've entered a new era of American politics with the obviously the internationalism has been creeping in for a while, but now because of the Trump movement and everything that has happened over the past few years, they've basically realized that if they continue moving at the pace they were before, it's not going to it's not going to stick. And so they need to move fast now, and it's basically do or die for them. And so because of that, these things have accelerated, and what the development that would take place, the development of our ideas, the development of new methods and techniques for political engagement and spreading awareness and ideas about things, um, we haven't had time for these things to develop. We've only just been, since 2015 and 2016, we've only just been in this environment where people are again beginning to think of the American nation as something different than what we've been taught over the past 50, 60 years. And so because of that, we don't have a lot of what we have, a lot about the situation is in flux. It's constantly changing. It's not firmly rooted in anything. One of the things that I discussed a few days ago, last week, was how the Trump movement was right, and it resonated within the American people. It resonated with the American people because Trump was talking about American identity, Americanism, not globalism, and I will touch on that here in a few minutes. Like that specifically, will take that in a different direction. But the problem was that this Americanism was grounded in, or like the American ethos that Trump talked about, the American identity that he proposed was really based in like mid to late 20th century America. And we know, or perhaps maybe you feel this way, but you don't know, we know that 20th century America, mid to late 20th century America, is really not the America that was founded by our forefathers. It's certainly not and when I say founded, I don't just mean like in the Constitution in 1776, but all the way back to Jamestown, to the Mayflower, all the way up through the present time. Like even in our modern time, in our contemporary, it's kind of weird. I'm trying to get away from saying modern time or modern era, because obviously like the modern era goes back to like what, like early modernity was like the late 1500s, right? Maybe I'm wrong about that, but it was like, I'm pretty sure modernity like starts in like the 1600s at least. And so modern era, obviously America as a country began in the early modern era, but so in our contemporary era, within the past 100 years or so, even in this contemporary era, the way that America is, like the pop culture and the big cities, this prevailing definition of America is very different than the lived daily life of the lived experience, to use that term, um, the lived experience of middle America, rural America, was very different, and it was much more like what it used to be, even though it was of course influenced by technology and mass media to a large extent. So, given that we are in this new age in so many different ways, we have to uh, figure out our place online. We have to figure out how to spread ideas digitally through the mediums that we have available to us, whether it be radio, TV, internet, social media, etc., or real life spreading of ideas. We have to figure out a proper balance between these things. We know that while the like digital information systems and transmission systems are very important, and we can't neglect those if we want to be relevant, if we want to be effectual in the coming years. We know that we can't ignore those things. However, as I've talked about and as you already know, we can't live in those spaces. Number one, that's what they want. It's much easier for them to control us there, so we can't live in those places. But we also just can't. Like if we're living online, then what's the point of any of this? If we're just living in these online like made up uh, realms, or what I was going to say prison cells, but it's not very descriptive, but that's basically what they are. If we just live in these ghettos, if we live in these online ghettos, then there's really not much of a point in trying to save the physical world. And so we have to figure out balance between all of these things. But in order to do so, we have to gain political power. We have to gain influence in the country. But we don't have the political infrastructure to do that. We don't have the networks to do that. We don't even really have a coherent political philosophy for the time that we're in. Part of that is just because things have changed so much, but then I would say the greatest part of that is because our leaders, the people who should have been developing these things over the past 100 years as we have transitioned from the old world into the new, our leaders were worried about other things. They were worried about um, money or like perverted or corrupt forms of power. At the end of the day, though, it could just be like that they were wrong. One thing about the 20th century, and I'm going to talk about what not to do from the 20th century, but every so often ideas have this time where it's, there's the old ideas that have, like the ideas that have been in power, the reigning idea for a period of time, and every so often you have a period where new ideas and new factions can come and try to challenge the old. And in the 20th century, you had a war between, this is what the both world wars were about, as well as um, much of the political conflict and a lot of the strife throughout the world was which faction, which ideology will win out. Will it be fascism, communism, Western liberalism? Within like left-wing ideologies, which one of those will win out? Will it be like continental labor movements? Will it be Soviet Bolshevism? Will it be American uh, like progressive liberalism? What will it be? And obviously there was one winner. We know that liberalism, Western liberalism broadly, won out especially after the fall of the Soviet Union. We beat, like I say, we meaning our country, but not ideologically. Liberalism beat fascism and it beat these other ideas out, these other nations and factions. And then the Cold War was like, which left-wing ideology will be preeminent? Which one will dominate the world there? And then after, like you can say that the West was winning, that Western liberalism was winning long before the Soviet Union actually fell because of the success of Western countries, the wealth and the prosperity that took place under Western liberalism. However, it wasn't a given that the Soviet Union would continue losing forever. Maybe it became more apparent over time, and then the Soviet Union fell, and you know the rest about how we got here now. So there will come a time, it might not be right this minute, it might not be in 5 or 10 years, but there will be a time very soon in the grand scheme of things, in the big picture, that there is a time when this idea can be challenged. We're already seeing the beginning of it now. We saw it in the beginning, like of the Trump campaign. These were ideas that were very different. Just Trump was by no means like a hardcore interventionist or anything like that, but you saw at the beginning of this, like the ideas that Trump had in 2016 were not all that different in some ways than what Ron Paul talked about in 2012 or before. They both were against interventions in foreign wars that didn't benefit the United States. They were both about like decreasing American police adventures, not just in wars, but in other like with foreign aid and all of that sort of stuff. And so, but over time, while Ron Paul did not win the primary in 2012 or 2008, part of that might be because of the personality thing. Trump had an advantage there. But after 8 years of Obama, Trump comes along and he has these ideas that have been voiced before, and now they begin to be they're suddenly more popular. But we don't have a coherent political philosophy for the right wing of America, the Christian right wing, the Christian American right wing in the 21st century. We don't know how we're going to deal with, and this is something that everybody's having to deal with, like how to balance like internet and real life, and how to deal with things because the political situation with the government is so much different than it was 70 years ago and all of that. Anyway, but as we're developing these things, as we're developing these new ideas, methods, and vision, we have to develop a new vision for what America should look like in the next century and beyond. But as we're developing this, it has to be fresh and new, but not divorced from the past. It can't be divorced from who we are as Americans. And again, part of this process, as I've talked about before, you can go back and watch the replay of my stream, Reviving the American Identity. And I think that's a very important stream, and I talk a lot about this, but part of this is remembering who we are as Americans, reviving that American identity, not defining a new one, as many people would like us to do. Oh, we have to define a new one with a multi-ethnic, working class populism or anything, that's not what we need to do. But we need to revive the American identity, relearn who we are, and then, in order to become who we are, we have to develop, um, we have to understand how we're going to do that. And so but that has to be connected with the past. And so there's an example that I want to talk about, an example that I want to give that I think is relevant here. One time I was watching um, some old debates from like debates and campaign speeches, clips from past presidential candidates, primarily starting with primarily starting with I would say like Clinton, the Clinton era, and then George Bush and Al Gore, up to like Kerry, Obama, all of the people that were a part of those races, and then up to Trump. And one thing that's interesting, I'm not sure, maybe this is just a feature of representative government or like elected government, but I think there is something uniquely American about it, at least in the expression that we see here in America. I think that it is unique to us because of the nature of our founding and our beliefs about the president. I think that this is like, I think I heard this in a discussion. I'm not sure if it was, I believe that Curtis Yarvin and, what is his name? He's a Claremont guy. I'm totally blanking on his name right now. Anyway, but I think that I heard them, they were talking about how basically like America got put into this weird position because we had George Washington and we had Thomas Jefferson and John Adams and John Quincy Adams. And these were like our first presidents. We had the culture in America we began to expect, and this happens all the way through, because even though there were better and worse presidents that followed them, like there were, to one, they were, some were better, some were worse, some were up to that standard, many weren't. Um, but still, we had such a good stretch of, especially at the beginning, at the foundation of our nation, we had so many good leaders that our idea of the president is that he should be, he's like a philosopher king, basically. Like we don't just have like, we don't elect presidents to be bureaucrats until we elected Joe Biden. I think that that shows like that's a really, now, was Joe Biden elected? That's like a different thing. So much of it was just like a reaction against Trump. But if you take Trump out of the equation, obviously Joe Biden never becomes president because they can put somebody else there. But in America, we don't elect presidents because they embody some ideology that we like. Americans elect presidents because when they believe that they choose the candidate that they believe most embodies America. Now, this changes at different times. It changes with generation to generation, and it changes radically between demographics. And I'll touch on that again in just a minute. But when presidents or when candidates are running for president, they tell their story. They tell the story of their life, and they tell them in such a way where it's like, this is the American story. For example, like just the two most extreme examples in our lifetime. You have Obama, who's telling this. He's like the son of an immigrant, and he's a single mother. So the son of an immigrant and the son of a single mother, and he grew up poor, and he grew up, like he grew up playing basketball, and he worked really, really hard, and he got into Harvard, and just by uh, the sweat of his brow and his good his good efforts and his intellect, he got into Harvard. Definitely not affirmative action, and he has such a great story. And then he was a community activist. He was a community organizer in Chicago, and he was a lawyer, and he helped out this is how he portrays himself. He's a lawyer, and he helps out the less fortunate, the lowest in our society, and then he was a people's voice in the Illinois State House, and then the U.S. Senate, and then president. And this is the story that he tells in his candidacy. And so the fact that Obama was elected says something very, like, we talk about Obama's comment that we have to fundamentally change America. But America had already been fundamentally changed when Obama was elected. Obama may have played a part in furthering that fundamental change, but the fundamental change happened long before Obama was elected. The seeds were planted long, long before. And this was, yes, goes back to the 1965 Immigration Act. It goes back to Ellis Island. It's like Wilson and everything up until the modern day. But America had been fundamentally changed. The people who had already been here, who had been here forever, weren't changed, but there was now this huge competing faction, which was now big enough that it couldn't be ignored and it couldn't just be overcome by rallying because nobody was aware. Like the mainstream were not aware of it. You had people trying to warn about this before, Patrick Buchanan, etc., other people like that. You had people trying to warn about it, but the average person didn't know. They weren't thinking about it in these terms. And so in 2012, the statement that was made when Obama was elected is that this guy represents the average American. This guy is what Americans are. This is what America is. Now, obviously, half the country, more than half the country, whatever, I don't know what the exact split is, disagreed with that. But what that says is that there are two competing nations in America. There are the people who have been here. There are like the Protestant, old stock Americans. And then there are the people who have benefited from the affirmative action regime, from the immigration system. And this is not just like people from India or Africa, but it's people from Eastern Europe, people from South America, people from Italy and Ireland and all over the place. People from Germany who were not here until 1915 or something like that. People from Spain or people from wherever that came here later and were not a part of America but came here for economic opportunity or to escape something in their homeland. They were running from something. And that's a big part of Obama's story too. And so you have this is basically the coming of age of a separate nation within the American borders, a separate competing nation which is hostile to the founding nation. And the Trump movement is a reaction against that. The problem is, of course, that Trump couldn't fully articulate that American nation, what we are, who we are, what we believe in, what we're like. He could to a large degree, and that's like he was very good at it. He was very good. I will say this, Trump was not good at articulating what America is, as in like what he said about America in the 80s and the 50s and the more vague statements. The further you go back to like the Civil War and to the Revolution, it becomes more vague and there's more platitudes. But still what he was saying about us was accurate, but it wasn't really like quickening. It wasn't inspiring, like the words weren't. It was the spirit of Trump, which very well reflected the spirit of America. And we saw his life and we see the way that he is. And even though he's like not the best moral exemplar, we see his life and we see his behavior and we see the way that he lives his life. You know, this is a guy who had something and he turned it into something much bigger, much greater. He wasn't born from some like poor immigrant family and became a Harvard lawyer through affirmative action and basically got to the presidency through affirmative action. He was somebody whose family had been here. They had something. His family had worked hard to make what they had, but it wasn't because they were like, "Oh, please, will you give us something? We need something." They made it. They made what they had. And Trump took it and he built it and he turned it into something great. And Americans related to this, like nationally, the national spirit of America could relate to this, even if individuals, and this is something that like the left wing and even like neocon right wing pundit class can never understand, because they're like, what does like a redneck in Alabama have to do? What do they have in common with this billionaire real estate developer from New York? And even if these individuals, these like so-called rednecks and so-called like white trash, even though they hadn't built some multi-billion-dollar real estate development company, they have something in them which can relate to that. Their forefathers built this nation. It wasn't the immigrants, it wasn't the slaves, it wasn't any of those people. It was their forefathers. And not some like great ancient like mythology about their forefathers. It was their parents and their grandparents and their grandparents. People who they knew. The old people in our society right now have met people who were alive like post Civil War. I mean, like a couple decades ago, you could meet somebody who met somebody who fought in the Civil War, and that's an incredible thing. So this is like in living memory almost for these people. They know what it's like to do something great because their parents and their grandparents did it. In some cases, maybe they would have done the same thing, but they have the entire weight of like the U.S. U.S. led international liberal order weighing down on them to suppress them from doing anything. The affirmative action regime, all of these different things, they have these things weighing down on them. And so they love to see an American who was not crushed by that because they can relate to it because that's what their parents were like. That's what their grandparents were like. And so the election of Donald Trump was a reaction against this idea that Obama is the exemplary character, the exemplary figurehead of the American nation. They're saying, no, Americans are not that. Americans are something different. And so while Trump wasn't the best at it, at describing, he didn't really know exactly what he was doing because it was kind of beyond his understanding, and that happens a lot. A lot of people are animated by something outside of themselves, maybe the hand of God, we don't know. But one of the downfalls of Trump was that, and this is partially his fault um, for not utilizing his authority properly in the way that he should have. The staffing issues, the mundane like management aspects of it. But part of it was something that he couldn't have foreseen as somebody who's not really like a political actor, and many of us we wouldn't even have known that this is something that we would need in 2016. Most of us, obviously, again, there have been people talking about this sort of thing for a long time, but they're not listened to for a long time until very recently. But we didn't, at the time of Trump, we didn't have this vision. We didn't have a Christian right-wing American vision for what our nation should look like and for what we should be doing to affect it to that end. And so because of that, we fell, and now in this, that's really what the whole situation that we're in now is about. Like I said, Obama was this coming of age moment for a competing hostile nation within the borders of the United States, which is trying to overtake and snuff out and dominate the historic American nation. Trump was a reaction of the historic American nation against these like thieves, basically, these thieves who are trying to take what belongs to us. And then the system which they basically created this like golem of this like collective, it's like an egregore or something created by the internationalist liberal order in order to suppress and crush the true historic American people because we're too good, we're too energetic and too powerful and too like I think that we're like naturally a very moral people, but we're not going to go too far into that right now. And so it's the internationalist liberal order, like I said in one of my recent streams, the Biden administration, like while Obama had like some of these internationalists, like true internationalists in his campaign, in his administration, he was a globalist. He still balanced this with like the Clinton Democratic Party, which was like neoliberal, and while they believe in free trade and stuff, they do still believe in American intervention abroad in other ways, whereas but they wanted American hegemony, whereas the people running the Biden administration now, like the World Economic Forum, don't want American hegemony. They just want to use what America has to police it for their own world government purposes, basically. And so we've kind of completed that shift of the left into what they are now. And so after America reacts against this hostile nation that has been created and has grown in the borders of the United States, what we see now with the clamping down of state power on right wingers, on dissidents, on Christians, etc. This is them trying to kill the baby in the cradle, basically, of this movement, of this resistance and this pushback, where we say, no, we're not just reacting against it. We're not just trying to push it back in the opposite direction anymore, trying to get this hostile nation to assimilate and to accept that our way of living is the right way to go. It's like all or nothing, basically, because they are trying to kill us. They're trying to kill all of us. If they could just completely eliminate everybody who is predominantly of the old America, then they would happily do it, and they would happily have their like tax slaves that they've created. They would be happy to have them just repopulate all the areas where we cease to exist, where we would cease to exist if they were to do that. And so they're trying to figure out a way to break our will, to break us down, to stop this resurgence of old Americanism. And so our responsibility is basically to push back, to fight back however we can, to reassert ourselves in our own political system, the one that we created, by the way. They talk about the good benefit, like the benefits of the American system, the goodness of it. It's like, well, it might have been abused by other people, but in there was always this seed of goodness and truth, like their polluted understanding of justice, where all men are created equal and everything. Yeah, that's our stuff, by the way. We wrote that, so maybe we get to determine what that means, not you. Try can't go off on that too hard. Anyway, and so Obama and Trump have some, and this is something I didn't even think about, but then you look at like Biden and the evolution of America's identity since Obama, and now Biden is the representative for America because he's just this like meat puppet, this senile, like soulless flesh puppet for international NGOs. And it's like a mask off thing. They're like, yeah, actually none of this is what really matters. What matters, like, who the American government needs to represent, the embodiment, the president should be the embodiment, like I said, of of the constituency. And so now it's just international liberal NGOs. So kind of a mask off moment, but that's a whole other story. And so it's tough that we have to do this while we're under such great pressure, under such great attack. It's unfortunate and it's tough, but a lot of times this is what has to happen. This is under these circumstances is where some of the best things happen, some of the greatest innovation, some of the greatest men are born and developed and molded. And so just a general theme of what we talk about is that you shouldn't be upset that we live in this time. You should just acknowledge it. There have been a lot of times where people said, man, I wish that I was born in a different time, but those people go on to do great things. Again, that's a rabbit trail. And so our responsibility is to continue to speak to those people who Trump spoke to, the people with whom his message resonated, the people who saw his spirit and his energy and and felt kin to him. That's really what it's about. That's what this whole idea of the nation is kin. They saw Trump, they saw who he was with his faults and his strengths, and they felt kin to him in a certain way, if only on a spiritual level in some sense. And so our responsibility is to continue that process and to speak to them and say, yeah, we are kin. The American people are kin, and we've been that idea has been suppressed and stolen from us, but we should be able to communicate to them the truth of that. But one thing that Trump said, and I mentioned this earlier, is he said, a new vision will govern our land, new credo, Americanism, not globalism. And that's good. Americans were happy to hear that because they know that globalism is the enemy through, many voices speaking about globalism, and then Trump speaking about globalism versus America. And so they know that internationalism, globalism is bad. They know that it's the enemy. They know that it's taken away their jobs. sent them to Mexico and to China and everywhere else. They know that it's brought people from everywhere else in the country to inherit their birthright, the one that belongs to them and to their children. So they know that. They know that this is the enemy. They know that something should be, there should be some reaction against it. They know that it should be something which comes from within the American nation. But we don't really know what Americanism is. We can talk about our identity like we did before, but what is Americanism? What is the American philosophy for government? What is it? There's like the American economic system, which was developed in the like 19th century. We have that. We have Anglo-American jurisprudence, common law, and all of that. But what is our philosophy towards government? What is our philosophy towards the world as it is in the 21st century? How do we deal with the changes? How do we deal with like the social changes, the political changes, all of this? We don't really know. And it turned out, again, that Trump's idea of Americanism was really just returning to an earlier stage of the New World Order, basically. Maybe before it became so nefarious, but it was still not good. It was still not right. And you can see that because you try to return to that phase and it doesn't work because you're still like in enemy territory, basically. Things were better back then. There was more prosperity in the 1980s and 90s. But at the end of the day, or, you know, if you can go to the post-war period, the post-World War II era, there was more economic prosperity. There was like a healthier social fabric. But at the end of the day, that prosperity is not a guarantee, and it was kind of just a happy coincidence. Maybe not a coincidence, but it was just a happy side effect, and it was something that allowed people, that convinced people to place more faith in that system. But at the end of the day, it's still enemy territory. And so as Trump embodied something about let me put it this way. Trump spoke to the American nation, and that was good. It was helpful. His words and the speeches that he gave were good. They led people in a good direction. They brought up issues that other people in the mainstream had not been talking about. We can do the same. But with us, as it was with Trump, just what we're speaking about will not be the most powerful influence that we can have on people. The most powerful influence, the most powerfully influencing factor of Donald Trump was that, in a sense, he embodied the American nation. He was an avatar of the American nation. And that's why the American people have such a love for him, even though he failed so magnificently in his presidency in many ways. Because there's, again, well, I shouldn't say again, I haven't talked about this on the show before. I've talked about it on other streams. There's a lot of debate throughout history over what the state is, over what the head of state is, but at the end of the day, it can be basically said that the state is the embodiment of the nation, and like on a smaller level for the purpose of governing and maintenance of tradition and these sorts of things, and that the head of state should be the embodiment of the state, which embodies, and so therefore, the head of state, in a sense, should embody the nation. And Americans have always kind of understood that. It has been kind of a problem for us that we think that we want to elect a philosopher king to the presidency, especially in a contemporary era where there are not many philosophers and there is certainly even fewer noblemen to fill that role. But the head of state, the president, should embody the nation in some way. And so Trump, as an avatar of the American people, that's where his power came from. And so what we should be doing is striving to embody the spirit of America. And that's not impossible. It's not something that you just have to will yourself into doing. You don't just have to try really hard. You don't have to consume. It's not just I just have to read enough of this one American author or sing the songs enough. That's not what it's about. But you have to know who you are, and it's who you are if you are an American. It's in your blood. It's in your lineage. It's what you were supposed to do. It's your birthright. It's your destiny, perhaps. And so you can do it. Not at the level of Donald Trump, maybe, because not all of us are meant to be the president. Not all of us are meant to be great men on the world, like great men of history with, capital G. But we can all strive to be great men, great Americans in our own way. And by exemplifying the spirit of the American people, you will have so much more power, so much more influence than just trying to convince people in your life at the water cooler or at the dinner table, just trying to convince them with facts and figures and logic and stuff. But you have to exemplify the character of America. And who are we? What is America? This is not a nation of immigrants. It's not a nation of refuse washing up on the shore. It's not a nation of poor, tired, huddled masses from the refuse of Europe. This is a nation of pioneers. It's a nation of settlers. It's a nation of moral, righteous, upstanding men conquering the wilderness, conquering a continent, establishing a commonwealth for their nation. That's what, like, republic and commonwealth are synonyms in many ways. And they established this government, the American government. I've really come around on this again. There are flaws with it, of course. It's a problem to treat the Constitution as if it's Holy Scripture, because it's not. There are flaws. But our governing system really is so amazing. It's astounding what was developed by our forefathers. And it was developed for us. It's ours. It's ours to cherish and to protect and to guard and to alter and adjust where need be. But this is a nation of brilliant men, of thinkers and artists and pioneers and settlers, people who established something. And it's not something new. It's not as if these people were dropped on the earth from a vacuum and then did these things. Like, this is in our character. We were bred for this over millennia. America is like an acorn planted in the ground that fell from from a Saxon oak. That's what America is. It's an acorn from a great oak that has existed for thousands of years. This is something very real. We are, like, to the very depths of our being, in our bones, this is who we are, and this is who we're supposed to be. And we should embody that. Just as our forefathers established a nation, they settled and conquered a savage, wild continent and handed it down to us. We have to pioneer and trailblaze our way through this coming century, this coming age, where while the threat to our physical safety is not as great as it was when we were going out into the wilderness amongst the Indians and settling there, the threats are even greater in many ways. Spiritually, the threats are greater than they ever have been. And so we should honor their legacy by going forward into this new age and establishing a new framework, like establishing a new vision. You look at our dollar bill and you look at the reverse side of it, and there's it's like the reverse side of the Great Seal of the United States. And there's a lot of people don't like it because it's a pyramid and it's like Masonic imagery. But it says Novus Ordo Seclorum, which is a new order for the ages. In the 1700s, I don't think that new order for the ages necessarily has the same meaning that it has now. But put aside the modern meaning of new world order. And think about what our ancestors were trying to do when they came here. They were trying to create something new for themselves, for the time that they were in, out of what is old. The Constitution, the laws, the common law that our nation was built on, was not developed. It wasn't made up in the Enlightenment period. Our Constitution, and the founders will tell you this if you read them, especially people like Thomas Jefferson, these people were trying to create a nation which was built upon the traditions of the Anglo-Saxon peoples. It was supposed to be like a new Britain, like a new founding of the British nation. Thomas Jefferson wanted his proposed seal for the United States had Hengist and Horsa on it, the twin Anglo-Saxon brothers who founded England. So they were trying to create a new order. They established a new vision out of something old, out of something which was enduring. Because if you try to create something new, like what liberalism is, like this is what progressivism is it's trying to establish something new with no connection to anything in the past, no roots. It's like cutting a tree from its roots and trying to replant it somewhere else. It has no roots. It's going to fall down in a light breeze. You can't do it. To do that is subversive, and that's why I always speak against trying to take like foreign ideologies and bring them here, or foreign government systems. We don't need a fascist America. No fascist America, no communist America. Even like look, you know that I love the British monarchy. You know that I love English history and all that stuff. We don't need a British monarchy in America. We have our system. It worked. It worked fine. The reason that it stopped working is because we brought people here who are not of that system and of that tradition. That's the problem. So we have to create a new vision, a new order out of what is old, out of what our forefathers and our ancestors here in America have given to us and passed down. And we have to take that and make something new out of it, and then pioneer and trailblaze into the new age. And the time is coming, because like in the 90s, in the 2000s, it was like, if you listen to debates now, all of the issues are about like how basically it was for boomers to decide who they wanted to manage their retirement years. Who's going to increase Medicare? Who's going to cut Medicare? How are you going to handle Social Security? How are you going to do this? How are you going to do that? It was all about that. How does America stand up on the world stage as, like, you know, in the waning years of the boomers who have lived in this era where America has dominated everything militarily? That's going to end soon. The boomers are going to be gone at some point. And then you're going to have a bunch of people without any direction. And then it's, what do we do? Like, the boomers had their heyday. They went to the moon. They did all of this stuff. They established this global empire. But all of those people are going to be gone, and you're going to have people who had no part in that. And then it's, what do we do now? Because so far, this government has been used to manage everything for the boomers. And it's, okay, manage their retirement. How do we handle things then? And then we're going to be left standing the bill, and we have to figure out what to do with it. And people are not going to know. They're not going to handle it well. You can probably see that they're already not handling it well, but it's going to go very poorly unless you have a strong movement, a strong group of people, a strong right wing to guide us into the future. And that's what I mean when I say pioneers of the new age. All right, let's go ahead and check in on chat and see what's going on there. We'll check our YouTube super chats. By the way, I see people spamming in chat. Thank you to the mods for handling that pretty well. It looks like a bunch of, like, the spammers are getting muted. Just feel free to ban them if you can. I think you should be able to. Just ban those people if they're spamming things. I see Yeet Peterson is in there. If we have any other mods watching right now, you guys basically have the discretion to do whatever needs to be done. I'm done. I'm just like done playing. I'm done like allowing that, whatever. There's been people, and I'm like, you know, because it's not a big deal. I haven't done anything wrong. I haven't done anything wrong. I haven't attacked anybody, and I'm not going to start, because I actually have like principles. I have goals. I have things that I believe that we need to accomplish that are higher than petty, stupid stuff like this. And so I haven't made an issue out of it, and I'm not going to. But as far as the mods go, I don't care anymore about like, oh, you know, they're just leaving a comment, whatever. You have full discretion to do whatever you want with that. Just stop the spam and keep the chat clean, and I'm happy. That's what I have to say about that. Okay, let's see here. Let's go to YouTube Super Chats and see if there's anything there. If not, we'll go ahead and hop off of here. Okay, Yeedy Peterson, thank you for the $5. Says, I hope everyone will be starting gardens and raising livestock this year instead of going on road trips with gas going up over $5 a gallon. Yeah, generally good advice. The gas stuff is so weird because it was like that was such a big portion of my that was such a big thing when I was growing up. It was like really expensive gas and all that, and then it just kind of went away. Like I mean, like obviously during Trump it went away, but I feel like before that it kind of had gone down a little bit, and it just feels like it's been. I guess maybe most of the years that I've been driving, it's been lower than it was when I was like early in high school and middle school and stuff. So maybe that's my perception. Just now that it's starting to get expensive. Anyway, that's that. We'll go check entropy if there's anything there. Chef Big Dog says, I will do what needs to be done. Thank you, Chef Big Dog. Carl says, true. Is this Carl MD? Anyway, and if you're like a fan, if you're, enjoy the stream and stuff, be sure to leave a like. I'm sure that these like losers spamming will hit the dislike button. So be sure to do your part. Hit the like button. It helps a lot, and it's just such a shame when people are like this. It's like I haven't ever done anything bad to any of these people, and they just they hate me. They hate me because I speak the truth. They hate me because I speak the truth, and they have to lash out and they have to try to destroy other people because they've never done anything of meaning in their life, I guess. So, anyway, that's enough of that. I'm not going to go into that anymore. But thank you all for watching. Again, as I always say, if you'd recommend this show to your friends online and offline, I appreciate it a great deal. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that it's been a good show. If you again, for next time, we're about to get off now, but if again in the future, if you'd like to support the show, the best way to do it is entropystream.live/Jake Lloyd. Even if you send it while I'm off stream, I will see it when I turn it on the next time. So, but anyway, I hope y'all have a great rest of your evening, and I look forward to talking to you tomorrow. Any other announcements? I don't think so. We will have another guest at the end of this week. I'm pretty sure I know who it will be, but I have a couple lined up. So we'll have another special guest at the end of this week. I'd like to increase it. I'm not sure. Maybe at some time we'll do more than one a week, but we'll see about that. Anyway, for the time being, until next time, I hope that you have a great evening, and I will talk to you